Hey there, fellow Cashflow hustlers. This is your host, Justin Grimes. I appreciate you tuning in today. We've got a very special guest, a mentor and a business partner of mine, Mr. Ace Chapman. Ace, how you doing today, man?
I am great. It's good to be here with you, Justin. I've been looking forward to this ever since you told me that you were getting rolling with this podcast. So I'm excited to be on.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you taking the time to be on with us. So a little bit about Ace and his background. So Ace bought his first business at the age of 19 with some savings from a summer job. And from that point on, caught the business buying bug. He leveraged $3,000 he saved working the summer before college and used it to buy a business for $70,000, which we're going to get into that. So over the last 16 years, he has bought 40 businesses, everything ranging from mortgage companies to a clothing retailer. Right now, seeing an explosion in the market for businesses under $2 million. His philosophy and tactics being used are a bit of what we're going to talk about today. So you mind telling the listeners a little bit more about your background and kind of what you're up to currently focused on?
Yeah, so I mean, it's one of those things as anything evolves, especially when it's a brand new industry. It's interesting to think back to 20 years ago when this was just something that just literally did not exist. You know, people were obviously buying and selling offline businesses. Even the market for small offline businesses was a little bit tougher because you could only see the businesses that were for sale in the newspaper. You couldn't even see offline businesses advertised anywhere else. And so the internet created this new thing, and it's been interesting to see the liquidity that's come to the market, the amount of money that's moving in this market, as opposed to when I was doing both offline and internet-based deals 19 years ago. And there was just a lot less fluidity and liquidity. So a lot of things have changed over the years, and I'm excited to chat with you today on kind of what's going on in the market today.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to ask on kind of how you got started out. So you took $3,000 and got you into a deal valued at 70.
Yeah. So valued in the old multiples at 70. It's interesting. Back then, things were selling at about 1 times earnings. You could even find unestablished businesses that were selling as low as like 6 times earnings, which was a monthly basis. And even up until probably about 2008, 2009, things were measured on a monthly multiple. So that's something that has shifted just incredibly. Now we're seeing things that are selling at a 3 multiple that's annual multiple. So that very first business that I did, it was making $60,000 a year. The owners wanted $70,000 for it. And I knew nothing about I didn't at that point know anything about multiples of income or being able to calculate that was a 1 multiple or whatever. What I knew was that I had one comp. And I know you're familiar with real estate, and that's how they come up with their value. And it's just looking at what are the other things that are for sale and what are those costs. So I was at a really great university, top 20 university in the country. They, of course, were expensive because of that. So I was fortunate enough to have a scholarship, but I had these other friends that were paying literally $35,000 a year at that point. Now it's $60,000, which is just absolutely unreal today that they're charging that much. But that's $140,000 investment. And my friends that were seniors and graduating were excited to get a job that was paying $35,000, $40,000, that were these entry-level jobs. I'm like, okay, I'm able to buy this thing for $70,000 and it makes $60,000. This sounds, compared to that comp, like an incredible deal. So the more I thought about it, when they first told me the price, I'm like, okay, I've got $3,000. They want $70,000. I don't have another $67,000. So there goes that deal. The thing though is, like, the more I thought about it, I'm like, man, I really want to make this happen. I want to figure out how I can pull this off. And so I went back to them and asked if they would be willing to let me pay half of it over time. And so They agreed to that kind of reluctantly. I really hadn't even told them that I was the buyer yet because they saw me as this 19-year-old kid. But I told my new buyers, and so I'm just going back and forth asking these questions. So they allowed that. Then I had a buddy of mine who did come from money. He was willing to invest $15,000, and then I did something that I don't recommend anybody do, let alone a 19-year-old kid. I took out some credit cards for the amount in between, and got the rest of that $35,000 to pay down. So that was how I pulled that deal together, and it changed my life. It was when I realized, wow, you can literally go out and buy cash flow, and that's been the theme of my life, which is why I decided I got to be on Cash Flow Hustle.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, you're the king. Yeah. Well, welcome home.
Yeah.
On the just kind of in the online space at this point, so we have looked at FBA businesses and affiliate marketing businesses and all kinds of stuff. What are you noticing out there as far as you mentioned liquidity and things like that, kind of coming into the space? What are you noticing out there, things to look out for?
Yeah, so there is a lot of liquidity. The biggest thing to look out for is having over exuberance about any asset. Anytime people just think, oh, this is easy money, that's when it's time to run. And what we've seen in this market is there are people that are coming in and they recognize this is an amazing return, because it is. I mean, if you can buy something that, may not be at 1 times earnings like the deal that I did at the first deal, but it's at 3 times earnings. You're talking about getting a 33% return and getting 100% of your money back in 3 years. And then everything after that is all kind of plus side. When you compare that to other assets, it's incredible. So to do those deals and think that you can just buy something and you're going to make money is the danger. And that's what we're seeing right now, is that people are like, man, where else can I make that kind of money? This is great. They go in, they don't do proper due diligence. They don't structure the deal with any financing. And, you've seen deals, this stuff. As we're talking through it, I see you nodding your head, like you see these things and it looks really good, but a lot of these are still small businesses. So the average business, no matter how well it's doing today, they have a 50% failure rate. So that means eventually like half of these things are going to fail. Now we do really well to condense that down to about 10%. It's 8% to be exact. But that still, has some kind of failure rate, but due diligence can help you out there. And then the second thing is having the right deal structure can help even mitigate getting into something and it not going well, but then the right deal structure that also has that seller on board with you as well. So these aren't just black boxes. That's like one of those old school terms from just, I just want a black box that just spits out money on a monthly basis. This thing is something that has to be nurtured. It has to be grown. It has to be, you have to do the proper due diligence going in. And then you've got to have the right deal structure and the right relationship with the seller to ensure that you've got some longevity in that business.
Yeah. I don't know if it's, I don't know. It's hard to say that deal structure may not be the most important aspect of the deal.
Yeah. It is. I mean, it's both, because obviously if you don't filter correctly and you get into a deal that just goes to zero, which a lot of these things do, like literally, we just, I talk to the brokers and they talk about, that's probably the most difficult thing is communicating to people that unlike an offline business, something can go wrong in this and Google can change an algorithm, or Facebook can change Amazon can change their algorithm, or Facebook can change the cost of their ads. And all of a sudden you go from making money to either making zero money or even losing money very, very quickly. So you can, we're buying a deal right now that was started 2 years ago that, we're buying the business for $1.3 million with a really great deal structure, but it's the power goes in both ways. Back in the day, to take something from zero to 1.3 million is just that was just crazy to do in a couple of years. And he's been earning that for years. He really got into that in less than a year. So to be able to do that in a matter of months was crazy. But guess what comes with that? It can go in the opposite direction in a matter of months as well. And so those are the first keys. The final key that's just as crucial is what we talk about in the PEPP program all the time, which is diversification. So you've got to have the due diligence so that you're not just getting into something that's going to disappear instantly. You've got to have the right deal structure so that you're protected against the downside, because income is going to go up and down. But then finally, you want to have a diversified portfolio so that when one deal goes down a bit, another deal is going up a bit, and it ends up balancing out over the course of time.
Sure. We talked in your bio. So is that number roughly accurate? The 40 businesses right now? Is that what you got active on the books, you think?
It's a little bit, it's a little over 50. So at any given time, we're closing a couple of deals this month. Mm-hmm. But yeah, basically 52 right now. And that's in varying stages. So I manage several entities. And it's always it doesn't mean that I want to always be clear. That doesn't mean I own or try to run 50 businesses by myself, or even that I own them 100% or anything like that. So I've got a lot of different entities. I've got a lot of different partners. I manage a private equity fund that buys deals. And it's cool that we're on this interview because you and I, we're in two different businesses together. Maybe even a third one coming up. So, I don't really even have to keep up with everything. What ends up happening is that the income that comes in, I'm always reinvesting in more and more deals to create that Warren Buffett model of building a business that buys businesses. So, between those different partnerships with guys like you, between the fund, between the program like PEPP, that's where those 52 businesses come from.
Understood. Okay. You talk a little bit about your philosophy. There's a lot, just for the listeners out there, there's a lot of different opportunities to build something from scratch, if you will. And your philosophy related to buying something that's already cash flowing and existing. Just kind of school us a little bit on that.
Yeah, it's something that I'm passionate about just because nobody really talks about it. When I talk to people about buying an existing business, it just isn't in our vocabulary, and it's not anything that the most popular magazines about business and entrepreneurship talk about as a possibility for the average person to be able to buy deals. When you look at what's going on in the world beyond kind of the internet marketing world, people are getting serious about it. The most popular class now at Harvard is actually, the most popular business class is a small business acquisitions class. And so that's kind of a neat thing. Those guys are realizing this is the greatest opportunity. The professors is over that. I heard him talking about this is literally the greatest opportunity for a Harvard MBA is to be able to go out and acquire one of these small businesses. That's where they see the opportunity going forward, not tech, not going to Silicon Valley and trying to raise some venture capital. It's literally just go out, find a little business that's making some money and acquire it. So I believe that compared to the risk that you take trying to start a business from scratch, it just is overwhelmingly easier to start making money quicker, start making money with a lot less risk, and start making money without the headaches and kind of overwhelm that I think people feel. I tell people all the time, the toughest thing with this, when people come to me, is that they've been taught that it's a very complicated process to start making money. And that's what causes that overwhelm. So you've got people that think I've got to become an expert at Facebook, Google marketing. I've got to be great at email copy. I got to figure out how to build an email database, social media marketing, build my following. It's just endless. And so they're learning all of this stuff. And when you tell them, it's like, okay, let go of all of that. Just find a single business and figure out how to get really great at running that business. That is a game changer for a lot of people. So that's the upside to getting into a existing business that's already making money, is that, you get a jump start on kind of get over. I feel like it's a leapfrogging over what a lot of people have to get to just to make $1. Forget, actually being profitable, but just like not losing money. It's a lot of effort and energy that goes into getting there.
Right. Yeah. That makes perfect sense. One of the key elements that we talk about on the show typically is, just the power of pivoting. So in business and life, things get thrown at you left and right, sometimes at the same time, repeatedly day after day. So can you talk a little bit about maybe a deal recent or other that, kind of we had to pivot and maybe get creative or resourceful and just figure out a way to make it work?
Yeah, one of the deals that comes to mind is a deal that actually fell into that 8%. So about 8% of the deals we find will just fail. Something happens, there's a Google update or whatever. What happened in this deal was exactly that. It was a Google update and the traffic just went away. So we're stuck trying to figure out, all right, what can we bring it back? And it was a smaller deal. So from my perspective, I was okay to walk away from the deal because we talk about diversification, and in that business we bought it at a 2 multiple. We'd had it for about 2.5 years. It actually made a return, and we made money. We got all our money back, made an additional return on top of that. If that's kind of one of the worst deals, like let's cut our losses and move on. And fortunately, we had a couple of leads that were on that deal. And one of them was like, yeah, I'm out. Let's just go move on to the next deal and reinvest those funds into other things. And I'm going to focus there. But one guy's like, no, I really want to try to bring it back more as a opportunity to learn and figure it out than anything else. And I'll get specific on this one because it is a very interesting one. It wasn't just the Google update. Part of it was an update, but we had also, the first thing was the update then, and that shot it down to about 50%. But it basically was online. It was an online Photoshop software. And in the copy, they had used the words Photoshop. And then in the URL was the word Photoshop. So Adobe reached out and was like, that's our trademark. Y'all can't use that. So that was like the double whammy that was like, all right, now we're just at 0. And it's like, okay, we just need to let this thing go. So the owner, Trey, which kudos to him, he's not the Trey that in your group, Justin touched on. This is Trey Ron. So Trey did an amazing job, and he got a whole new domain. He, obviously changed all the copy on the site itself, and this thing came back making more money than it did before, which was absolutely crazy to me. And sometimes you can't predict this stuff, and this is why you want that diversified portfolio. If you would have told me, because what people are shopping or were searching for is Photoshop. If you would have told me that we can get rid of the word Photoshop in the domain and all the sales copy, and this thing's going to make any money, then I would have been like, that's crazy. That's our main keyword that was driving the traffic before. But he found some other keywords that had less competition. And, you're familiar with this stuff now that one of your deals has some SEO related to it. But he hustled that deal, which I did a recent video on what is the most important quality to be able to be successful at this stuff. It's not about being super brilliant. It's just been hustle. Like the smart person in that deal would have said, this isn't going to work. Like that's it for this one. let's walk away. But because he was willing to grind and hustle, that deal literally ended up being larger than it was before, with everything against that being successful.
Man, that's awesome. Inspiring story. It sounds like what I need to get him on the show.
Yeah, he would be a good one to get on.
Nice. All right. Good stuff, man. All right. Are you ready for the rapid hustle round?
Let's do it.
All right. Awesome. What is your favorite resource, book, podcast, or other that you found useful in your cash flow hustle journey?
So for me, I am a very big fan of the Warren Buffett's. It's actually not even his book. It's just Berkshire Hathaway's shareholder letters. It's a book that's a collection of all the shareholder letters from the very first one that Warren Buffett has written to his investors since he started Berkshire Hathaway, and his thoughts, his process, every deal they did, structures on deals, all that. I think it's one of the most underrated things. You know, I'm always preaching when we do deals, like every deal that we do is an opportunity to learn. So reading that book is an opportunity to learn from the greatest of our times, for sure, if not ever, but the greatest investor and deal maker and business buyer. So I am big on that. If you're interested in this stuff, that just is a necessary part of your library.
Is it a title of the book, or is it just?
It's Letters to Shareholders, Berkshire Hathaway.
There you go. Okay, cool. We'll get that in the show notes, link to that. If you could give your younger self one piece of advice as you began your cash flow hustle journey, what would that be? Scale.
I think, when you're younger, a lot of what you're doing is kind of tiptoeing and trying things just a little bit at a time. And I think for me, when I was younger, I was like, oh man, like I'm way too young to try to do a fund. I had opportunities and that kind of thing. It's as I look back, I realized I could have started a lot of the things, doing more deals on an annual basis, but I was very, cautious, which is great. But I think, people are erring on the side of being cautious. I would have told my younger self, take more risks, scale as quickly as possible when you find things that work.
Nice. Got it. Let's see. An important part of growth is setting goals and planning. Would you mind sharing maybe one or two goals that you got currently?
My most important goal right now is more around lifestyle and health than it is business and wealth. I'm one of the things that I certainly was a life changer for me was, about 4 years ago, I decided, I'm going to retire and do some kind of time to figure out what I want to do next. And the interesting thing was, as I spent about 3 or 4 years kind of hanging out at the beach and traveling and seeing the world, what I realized was I really love, I love doing deals. There's nothing else that I would rather be doing. So for anybody who is listening, who's trying to decide what their goals are, I think the first goal is finding something that you really enjoy that is going to pay your bills. The other thing for me, though, is, a lot of my younger years were spent doing deals and traveling around and not taking care of my health as much as I could have. And so that a lot of my focus is there now, and then spending time with family. I lost my dad last year, and sometimes those things remind you that, hey, we're just here for a little while, and remember what's really important at the end of the day. So, I went on a trip with my mom and sister and nephews to Dominican a couple months ago. So a lot of my goals are things like that.
Okay. Good stuff. Let's see here. Last thing I got is where do you turn to when you need feedback or guidance?
My most important, really life-changing relationship was a mentor that I had that, I just 100% would not be where I am today if he weren't willing to spend some time with me years ago. And he's a guy that, I couldn't afford to even pay him what his time was worth, but met him. He was impressed by the deals that I had done. And he was a guy that basically flips hospitals. And, he was willing to meet with me 4 times a year, and I had to make the most of those 4 times. And the very first time I met with him, he was like, so where are your financials? Like, what'd you bring? And I was like, I didn't know to bring anything. He's like, what, do you think we're just going to sit around and chat? I'm like, I guess I did. He's like, no, not going to work like that. I'll see you next quarter. Bring, this balance sheet on the businesses. And he was tough. He was hardcore, but he changed the way that I view money, the way I view income, and the way I view doing deals. And so that's still the person that I turn to today as I'm navigating what I do.
Perfect. Finally, how can the Cashflow Hustler listeners get in touch with you?
Easiest way is email ace@acechapman.com. You can check out acechapman.com. And if you're interested in learning more about what we do, just enter your information there. And I'm active on Instagram. It's just @ace.chapman.
Perfect. All right, cool, man. Well, that's all I got for today. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your day. Like you mentioned earlier, that's the most important resource you got at the end of it. So I appreciate you spending a little bit with us and sharing some of your story and lessons learned.
Great to be here.
All right. Thanks, man. Take it easy.